So welcome to the Living Well Wellbeing channel. So today's guest is Ahmad, CCO, Chief Commercial Officer at Norbert Health. So we will dive into his personal well-being story and includes, experts' view from the healthcare, and also we gotta dive into what physical AI is, and we can imagine what the future will be. So are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Repeat after me.
Okay.
よりよく生きる。
よりよ生き do
Perfect. What's that mean?
but just more richer data that helped us understand what's going on. It's not 5 years away. I think it's probably less than 2 years away, hopefully, right? But we can really change the way that a lot of highly repeatable healthcare workflows are happening. And healthcare is a very physical thing. You can't separate the fact that, we have to be able to engage with human bodies, right?
So let's get started. So could you introduce yourself briefly?
Yep. My name is Ahmad Gabber. I am the Chief Commercial Officer at Norbert, here based out of New York. I live in Dallas, but I spend a lot of time in New York City because we're based here. I grew up different parts of the world. I spent time in the UK, different parts of the United States. I traveled for many years for work as well, so I've had the opportunity to kind of be in different places, live in different places. So yeah.
Sounds great. So before we get into your work, what you expert do, I would like to dive into, learn more about yourself.
Okay.
So as you describe, you based in Doha and also working at New York City. So we wonder how has living been different between these countries or these places in terms of your well-being perspective?
Yeah. I lived in Doha for this is a while ago, but this was many years ago when I was consulting. Like I said, I've lived in different parts of Europe, in the US. I think it helps you see kind of different people's lifestyles. If you spend all your time in Dallas, for example, you think the entire world functions and operates the way that people do in Dallas, which is absolutely not true. Even, I come to New York a lot, and so it almost feels like I have different routines depending on where I go, which I like that. It kind of, it's more expansive when you think about kind of how you want to live.
Mm-hmm.
And different places have different kind of stresses or different things that you need to be able to accommodate for, right? New York is fun, but also stressful in different ways. And so you have to change kind of your routine and things so that you can survive. Yeah.
Oh, so what kind of routine you have in New York City, or what kind of practice you started?
So, for example, like in Dallas, we don't walk. It's not a walking city for anything, right? Anything that I need to do, I'll get in my car in my garage and drive to that thing. But here I walk or I take the bike like exhaustively. I don't like to take Ubers unless the weather is bad, right? But I like being able to just, I'm going to walk for the next 45 minutes to go from here to here. That's like an example. Yeah.
Oh, makes sense. But you mentioned you love Dallas than New York. So why?
No, New York.
Oh,
I
sorry,
like
but
New York.
you love the
Yeah.
Doha.
Doha is a very it's a very calm, it's a very elegant place. And it's a very calm place, and it's growing so fast, and they're like building new things and it's innovating. You see it kind of like, and it's a very cosmopolitan place too. So it's just a unique place right now. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Or can I dive into about, you mentioned stress. So what kind of stress do you feel the most of the day?
Oh, we don't have any stress.
No
Startups have
stress at
no
work?
startups have no stress.
Okay.
Well, it's having to be in go from one place to the next, right? Just in New York, just having to go around and make it from here to here to here. We have a lot of things that are going on all the time. Different meetings, different customers, some ups, some downs, tough decisions that we have to make all the time. So yeah, professionally, it's not in the startup world, it's not the most stable.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of startup struggling. So that's why
Yeah.
I guess there's a lot of stress
Yep.
in that space. But so as you mentioned, you have the habit of I can't see my writing, but
Contrast therapy.
contrast therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is that? Could you describe it?
That's
detail?
so this is relatively new for me. Last year I went on vacation with my family to Norway, and they have these floating saunas basically. And I had heard of them, but I was like, this is a cool idea. And we went in the summer. Um, and I took my nephew and we went one morning, and then we jumped into the fjords, which are cold. And I usually don't like cold. Like I couldn't get into a cold shower, but it turned something on. I felt like something turned on in my body. I was like, I love this so much. And so then when I went back to Dallas, I was like, man, I'm gonna build a sauna company. And then I found out that they exist. They're already there, right? And people have been doing it for a while. And I was, I guess, a little late to it. But yeah, I've been doing that. So it's like sauna, ice plunge, sauna, ice plunge. And I do it like 3-4 times a week.
Oh, 3 times
a week.
Oh, sounds great.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
What does it do for your balance in your routine? And do you keep that habit through the locations you're in, Dallas, New York, elsewhere?
I haven't been able to pick that up here in New York yet, but I will. I need to. Physiologically, I mean, there's a lot of biology around what the positives of that are from a recovery perspective and all that kind of thing. But it really just, I sleep a lot better. It puts your body into kind of a more kind of just stabilized state. That's how I feel.
So let's move on to your work.
Okay.
Body work. So yeah, tell us more about your professional background and what do you do now?
Okay.
Yeah.
All of my experience is inside of healthcare. So I've spent the last 18 years doing lots of different things inside of healthcare, ranging from strategy consulting globally for healthcare providers, healthcare insurance companies, technology companies, pharma companies. I spent many years doing operations for those kinds of companies. I spent many years doing strategy and deals, and then left the consulting world and went to work for a large publicly traded company here in the US that delivered healthcare technology and services. I was the head of strategy there, and then I left and I started founding my own companies. So one was a digitally enabled primary care company. So we rebuilt the way that primary care, the kind of the primary care experience, both physically in the clinic, not just from the clinical side, but the experience of actually going to a clinic. What does it look like? How does it feel? What does it smell like? All of those small things to how do we deliver specific services, but then also what kind of healthcare can we provide to folks when they're outside of the clinic? So that was a very creative endeavor into kind of thinking about how do you transform the way that we deliver very important care, because primary care is, unfortunately, in the United States, is considered just like another episode, right? Whereas it should be more of a long-term maintenance, prevention, wellness endeavor, but the system here is not necessarily built to really reinforce that. So we tried to build a model that was sustainable, that also incorporated that, and that led to people actually having healthier outcomes in their life. So that we built that. We went through the pandemic. Pandemic was crazy, absolutely crazy. We were doing a lot of things during the pandemic as well that were outside, but we were very technology enabled. So we were delivering basically pandemic response capabilities to a lot of states. So, we used to be a small localized company and regional company in Texas. that very quickly leaned in to say, what problems do we need to solve for this pandemic? And it's moving so quickly and no one has definitive answers, and we got to solve this. So we grew very, very quickly during the pandemic. Crazy time. It's crazy that was like 4 or 5 years ago already, you know. And then kind of fast forward a little bit, did a couple more kind of digital platforms between then, and then got introduced to Norbert. And today I'm the chief commercial officer of Norbert. And when we were building out those clinical experiences, one of the things that we needed was more information about the individual patient when they were not in the clinic, so that we could have more continuous monitoring per se, but just more richer data that helped us understand what's going on with your life. And back then we had, the early days of some wearables. There were some pretty prototypey kind of devices, rings, things like that we were testing out. None of them really worked that well. I wear a ring now, but like this modern day. But the difference is, these were clinical applications, so they weren't necessarily just wellness tools. So they had to have certain specifications, certain requirements, things that we would have to be able to use them. They didn't work that well back then. Not that they weren't accurate. I mean, if something was inaccurate, we just put it to the side, right? Like it was not an eligible thing for us to test. But most of the time it was the usability for the individual. We don't even have to call them a patient, just the individual consumer of these services that we're providing. And so they didn't scale well because of that. And when I got introduced to Norbert, it was kind of like a very different paradigm. And it was like, man, this approach is a lot more realistic to be able to actually incorporate outside of someone came, there's a nurse, there's a doctor, like there's someone that's supervising you for the thing. But like, how do I have something that is just operating in the home behind the scenes, right? Like it's simpler to interact with. It doesn't require that I have to go and put something on my arm or charge something, or, that hassle of the things and those are the things, a lot of people think about the innovation, but they don't think about the small experience that someone's going to have to go through day in and day out. And a lot of times things fail because of that. Not because, the technology itself is XYZ, right? So we have to pay attention to a lot of those things. And so this is a very interesting trajectory that we're on. And I think technology has changed so much too in the recent years.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, the wellness too, like rings, and you wear. Actually, I wear the same. You mentioned some difference between wellness too and your services.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on that? So the differentiations in terms of the accuracy, or in terms of the different data body, right? So maybe could you elaborate on that?
Rings, and I mean, to use something in clinical flows, it has to be a regulated device. So wearable, I mean, some things in this watch are cleared in the US. I don't think that there's anything necessarily that's cleared in the rings necessarily, today at least. So there are more wellness indicators, right? Meaning if you went to a primary care doctor today and you pulled up your app for your ring, they would not look at it necessarily. For a couple of reasons. One, it's not validated data, but the other is, man, if everybody started going to their doctor and being like, hey, look at my app, it doesn't fit well into their workflow. It would be too much information. Even if you had a way where you're like, I'm going to email you all this like every day, right? I'm going to create some code and it's just going to constantly like send it to you, and I want you to stay on top of it. They'd be like, no, there's no way I have the capacity to do that, right? But it mainly is around medical regulation. And so that requires clinical trials, submissions to the regulatory bodies. These are expensive, complicated, long kind of processes. But I wear it, not to diminish the impact that they potentially have. And I think this is a very evolving space. Like the biggest thing that I like about this ring is I don't necessarily use it as much for sleep tracking, things like that. I use it as like an early warning indicator for when I'm being sick. right? Because it'll give you a notification, your heart rate's up, your temperature's up, right? Like something's going on within the night. Typically, I would probably just feel not average for a couple of days, and then, oh man, I'm sick today, even though I actually started getting sick 2 or 3 days ago. But what can I do 2 or 3 days ago to maybe reduce the symptoms, right? Like that's the window of impact. So those kinds of things are really useful, really valuable for people. And people like to wear them, right? Like people like them. It's not a hassle. It's working. I don't have to think about it. And that's the trajectory. And so even in clinical application, that is the bar. So even folks that are developing clinically graded tools, our bar is at the consumer level as well. And I think there eventually will be, over time, some level of convergence between this, because incorporating technology from a health and wellness perspective is gonna, for these upcoming generations, is just gonna become like very standard. And as the technology gets better and easier and like less hassle and like, you know, I've seen things, and I know you've seen things where like the battery technology that's coming out is much better, right? Like things are gonna last a long time. So it just becomes more practical to incorporate it into your life.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And also your services, Norbert Health, is beyond the wellness indicator.
Yes.
So connected with clinic and
Yeah.
make better workflow, creating better workflow, right?
Sure.
So I'd like to learn more about how it works on on the workflow of clinic.
Yeah. So the Norbert device is, we call it hardware-enabled AI, basically, right? We've manufactured our own hardware with our own capabilities that I think differentiates us a little bit, because we have a multi-sensor approach. We have compute here that's on the edge. It allows us to do a lot of things now and into the future. But the way that we do that is all through our AI. And it's very flexible in the way that we actually even incorporate it into different kinds of workflows. So it's a physical AI module that expands the ability for these workflows to really do sensing and engagement well. So it takes a lot of the same principles of, I got to reduce the amount of work, effort, friction, all of the things that typically exist, even though they may not seem that complicated. But if you go to a clinic today that's busy, that sees like 100 patients a day, the amount of times that someone is putting a blood pressure cuff on someone's arm and taking the blood pressure and taking the reading and putting it into the laptop and doing all of that process in itself maybe takes like 4 or 5 minutes, but they do it all the time, right? And now if they do another thing and another thing and another thing, that's an entire body of work that is happening. And they have to do it in like a primary care clinic or in a hospital. So it's like very core. But in some other areas, maybe it doesn't happen as often as it should be. Maybe, if I'm in a nursing home and I'm older and I'm frail, I don't like it when someone squeezes my arm with a blood pressure cuff every day. I don't like it. It hurts. So like these new abilities of us being able to sense this data, in a very frictionless way, and we can deploy it at someone's bedside. We can put it on a robot where the robot just comes in and scans you and leaves, right? Like that modular capability is really interesting to a lot of our customers. But it also gives you access to a rich set of data, because we don't just do vital signs, we do a bunch of other things that give us a good picture of the individual, that we can then use to be more proactive, where people can deploy more capable care programs. And I think that is we're at that inflection point globally from a healthcare perspective of the stresses on the healthcare systems, the aging populations. We don't have enough folks. We need to, and the technology that's available to us today is allowing us to be more precise, more proactive. Everything that happens in healthcare, unfortunately, is highly reactive, even today. Very reactive, right? Like it's called sick care, not healthcare, right? We're reacting to something when it's too late, and that's sad. It's, there's an impact that happens to people, right? And a lot of times people are like, well, I wish I would have known that this was happening. I wish I would have known that I should have changed this in my lifestyle, changed this drug, started this drug, changed my diet, XYZ. I just didn't know. And then it gets to a point where it's almost like the point of no return, potentially. And it shouldn't be like that. We have the capability today at scale, at like big population scale, and not saying, there's only one recipe. You have to go to this facility in this way for this program to work. No, it's like very customizable. It's very scalable. And it doesn't suck more resources into the system. It actually eases the burden on the system. It doesn't require that we have to build another institution to train another, in the United States, we have like a shortage of physicians and nurses and blah. They did people went through a phase of, okay, well, we need to build more medical schools. We need more nursing schools. We need to encourage more people. And it's not working because the amount of people that are exiting the workforce is exceeding the number that they thought. And it is definitely outpacing the number of people that are able to come in. So it's like, you can't just throw more humans at this. Like, we have to have a better approach. So yeah, we're super excited about this kind of new trajectory. And we think that this is the new normal inside of healthcare, and there's a lot of different applications for it. So
it's really interesting story. So from the perspective, as a patient, they can use it like preventive or primary care, and as well as the doctor or nurse can use more efficiently.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a great.
Yeah.
And also we want to dive into different two topics. So one is I want to ask about physical AI, as you mentioned, AI. So I would say the physical AI is buzzing now. So as Jensen speak out at the CES, then Japanese kind of what is physical AI. So could you elaborate on the physical AI? And I will ask about Japan later, as you mentioned, aging society.
Sure. Yeah. In healthcare, you can't solve everything with just software. There's always going to be limitations. We have physical automation is not a brand new concept inside of healthcare. People are very comfortable using surgical robots, for example, as assistive tools. They're not fully autonomous, obviously, but being able to put in intelligence in the way that we are delivering care, and healthcare is a very physical thing. You can't separate the fact that, we have to be able to engage with human bodies, right? Like, there's things that we have to do. So the concept of physical AI translates very, very effectively into healthcare needs. Now the question is, can you do it in a way where people trust it, where it's reliable? We're talking about health. It's not, an assembly line and some things broke. And so, okay, we lost $50,000 because these things broke, and we'll recalibrate the robots, and right. It's a very sensitive topic. So there's going to be limits in terms of, how quickly is it going to scale for different needs inside of healthcare. And I think people are being careful with that. But when it comes to things like sensing and engagement, the way that we're doing it, we reduce the risk because we're trying to capture information and do it in the right place at the right time for the right person. So, and we do a lot of testing to ensure the accuracy of the data and that it is stuff that you should be able to use and trust. And so, our customers aren't necessarily as afraid of really bad use cases that potentially could come off of it. But there's things that we consider. For example, are people going to feel comfortable with having a physical robot come at their bedside consistently? Are they going to build a relationship with that care tool, or are they going to reject it? It looks like people are going to accept it as a kind of very low touch. It's just a tool that's here to help me with my health. And it's here to help the humans that are also like extend their capacity, because they can tell that they're busy and they're constantly running from here to here. And especially if it's going to be done in a way where the robot is just like, it's like a very gentle, very polite kind of like assistant that comes in, right? But the positives are that it is extremely reliable. It does the things that it's supposed to do with extremely low levels of variability, which you don't actually get from a human. There's, some things that people do from a sensing perspective, and we use the term sensing pretty widely because capturing data, we call that sensing. So that could be doing a physical mobility assessment on a person. That could be a very subjective thing between two different people. They could see different things, right? Or they could miss different things. Even the way that some people capture your blood pressure. Some people are better at capturing blood pressure than others. And that has different implications. These robots don't suffer from that subjectivity of humans. So the way that we're capturing it's faster, it's more reliable, it's probably more accurate. And we can do it more frequently. No one ever gets tired, right? And the more passive these things become, then the richer information that we have to be able to really action on it well.
Really quick, curious. Like you mentioned that there's sort of the stage is set for adoption of this.
Yeah.
People are becoming more comfortable with physical AI. They might personally demand it, like as they, wear a ring or whatever. What's the lever that needs to be pulled for like wider adoption in health systems? And where are you seeing early adoption of this?
You got to clear the core like hurdles that everybody has to clear, right? You got to check all the right boxes. Is it affordable, or are you adding net new cost into my system? Because if the answer is yes, then it's like automatic no. Even though things like surgical robots, they are expensive, but there is a very comprehensive ROI model that they can do. And I also think of it from a different perspective as well. I spent many years having to think about how do we justify, like when we would consult, should we buy a surgical robot or not? And there's a lot of different implications too. If you potentially want to attract the best surgeons, they want to have access to the absolute most cutting edge technology. So there's different kinds of implications there too. But so cost is one, obviously. The other is, does it pass all of the regulatory scrutiny? Actually, that's number one. And that's that's a hard space to be able to do that. So that's the other. The third, which is, if you can clear those two, this is the most important one, which is the deployment of this technology into the workflows. Is it burdensome, or is it making people's lives easier just across the board? Staff, patients, all of that. That bar in healthcare is extremely high. Different than in other industries, for some reason. I think it's also because the amount of people that exists in the healthcare ecosystem that could say, I don't like this, is really big, right? And so it could fail at those steps. If people don't feel like this is actually improving the way that we do work every single day, and it's defensible in that way, and people kind of really love it, then that is your biggest hurdle right there. Yeah. So if you can clear those three things, then you have an approach. So we saw an example. It wasn't physical AI, but recently, all of the ambient scribes, the companies that are using AI to listen to the patient-physician conversation, it automatically captures the notes, charts, does all of that stuff. That removed a lot of burden from the provider in typing up notes, forgetting things, coding appropriately. Like there's a lot of stuff. The traction of that was explosive because it worked well. Right? Like I don't have to do anything. I walk into the room, I hit on, and it's working. And then at the end of the conversation, wow, like I got 80% of that's fantastic, right? So from a workflow perspective, that was amazing. That's the same level of bar that applies for a lot of other things in healthcare.
So jumping on that, if you had a magic wand to make Norbert Health explosive, what might that be?
Get all of our regulatory clearances tomorrow. I think we get all of our regulatory clearances tomorrow. Especially for like some of the key ones, we won't keep up with how much people want the device. Yeah.
How far away?
Well, we don't get one clearance. There's different functions, different features, and they have different burdens as well. Like some are more complex clearances than others. Also, you know, the way that regulatory bodies in different countries operate within each other. Like if we get FDA clearance for one thing, it makes it very easy for us to get that clearance in multiple other countries, for example. We won't have to do additional clinical trials, right? Like we're not starting these processes again. It's basically paperwork at that point, and people understand that, right? But some of the things that we're working on, like contactless blood pressure, is a high bar. It is a big holy grail for a lot of people. We have a functional version of it, but it still requires more data collection, full set of clinical trials. Like it's a big body of work. It's not 5 years away. I think it's probably less than 2 years away, hopefully, right? But we can really change the way that a lot of like highly repeatable healthcare workflows are happening in so many areas around the world. Just with that, it's a big deal.
That's amazing. So what I imagine is a world of Doraemon. You know Doraemon?
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of, we live with robots and they analyze ourselves and then know, oh, I'm feeling well or bad. Then
Yeah.
connected directly to clinic, then also.
Mhm.
I would say physical AI combining this product will be the world which we imagined in back.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
We can't you can't get to that unless you have enough contextual information that is being measured. That is the number one. That's step number one that has to be unlocked for all of those other dominoes to even start thinking about falling.
But what maybe it will be right in the future.
Yeah,
Foreseeable
for sure.
future.
Yeah.
Wow, it's amazing. And yeah, I'd like to change a bit the topics to Japan. So Japan is in society,
Yep.
and frankly speaking, actually I cannot imagine Japanese elderly person use robots or use devices, right? So do you have any advice, people on those who, people in Japan? So what should they change their mindset? What should they change their habits, etc.? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think and I'm not going to like speak specifically about the cultural context inside of Japan because I don't know it as well as you do. But what we have seen is that there are watershed moments with technology when technology serves a really good purpose in a very effective way. And so I'll give you a kind of a related example here in the US. There was a hypothesis that people would not want to engage with AI agents, voice-to-voice AI agents around their healthcare. This was like in the US, specifically older populations.
Yeah.
And it was kind of just like probably not, like we all just accept that assumption. They've been doing studies to see the engagement levels. It's actually a lot higher than people expected. And then in younger populations, the crazy thing is that people prefer that over a human.
Interesting.
Yeah. The number of years between when those populations become those like that second example of those people that prefer it become also the target population of like aged population, it's not that long. Like we're the same way that, years ago people would be like, elders are very technology averse. They don't like to use tech, right? Like 15 years ago, they're like, yeah. And it was true, right? You put a device in front of an elderly person, you design the US in a very simplified way. They're like, no, I don't like tech. But now, fast forward 15 years, the people that are now in that target population, they've been using tech every single minute of their lives for years. So they are very tech native. My parents use more devices than I do, right? They are more users of technology than I am, right? So that population leans, and it's changing. So I think, yeah, if we're saying let's design for exactly how things are going to be today and right now, sure, we may run into some challenges and things like that. But these are multi-year, multi-decade kind of transformations. And I'm betting on people adopting things that work better. Healthcare systems today, globally, some places they work better than others, but largely they are not meeting their potential. We're very far away from meeting potential, right? From across the board. Therapeutics, pharmaceuticals, has that area gotten extremely better? Sure, but like there's a very high amount of potential in even that area, right? Like personalized medications, like that's an entire ecosystem that we haven't even thought about. But the way that we deliver care and the way that we focus on wellness and proactive care and day in, day out, like habit reinforcement and things like that, we do not do that well anywhere in the world. So that is an area where I think we're going to see a lot of improvement.
Oh, that makes sense. And then do you see any opportunity to come to Japan as business?
We'd love to.
Yeah.
We're working on it.
Oh, you already worked?
Yeah. Japan is a very important country for us for a lot of reasons. But yes, you guys have a very acute aging population problem that needs really excellent solutions. And Japan is largely a very forward-thinking population and country when it comes to technology and just generally anyways. So yeah, Japan is a very, very important part of the world for us.
Oh, sounds great.
Yeah.
Do you have any demand from the, kind of enterprises from Japan?
Not yet, and we haven't gone far enough in our kind of commercial process to really start unlocking that. We're trying to pick the right time. It's getting a lot closer. But it is one of the first countries outside of the US that we are interested in.
Oh,
yeah,
gotcha. That makes sense, and I'm looking forward to see your product in Japan. So
we'd love it. Yeah, we'd love it.
Yeah, exactly.
With Europe,
of course,
yeah.
Kind of curious, just how has your work at Norbert sort of changed the way you think about your own well-being?
I think of the opportunity. So like I'm going through life and going, all right, like we know that these are the kinds of things that we're going to be able to accomplish with our technology. And then you go, all right, like how would you now incorporate that future into the way that people just live? And because we think about it all the time, you're constantly thinking like, okay, how do you incorporate this new kind of technology into the way that people are interacting? And then it's additional things. So like we do sensing in the classical sense as well, like that people would understand, like there's a specific metric that comes out, even though that is also very expansive, right? Like people don't typically analyze their gait patterns that often. You have to go to like a gait lab in a hospital or in a physical therapy place, and that's like a process. It's not an ongoing, hey, like there's a little bit of deterioration, and I think we can isolate that to your like the left side of your body, and like someone's thinking about that a little bit more. Is there something going on with your knee? Yeah, well, like I'm feeling a little bit of stiffness, this and that. Like that is a compound cycle that if you can think about how do I incorporate that kind of intelligence early, what are all the things that I'm going to be able to unlock for people, right? So that person may in 2 years have to undergo a knee replacement surgery, whereas you had a window of opportunity there, or they could have fallen. And seniors, when they fall, like it's bad. It's bad news, right? Like a lot of issues stem from falls. A lot of irreversible issues stem from falls. It's also very expensive. Like these are expensive things for the individual. These are expensive things for the system. Whereas if I can figure out how to incorporate something that is just like very careful in the way that it interacts with me in a very like gentle way, but more proactively, like how can I change the course of a lot of different things for a lot of people? I have older parents, and I'm thinking, what are the things that I would, but they're like, my mom is like very health conscious. she consumes so much health information. She's like, she sends me stuff all the time, and I'm like, oh, thank you, this is super helpful. And what kind of things would be helpful for them or folks that aren't necessarily like that, right? Who healthcare is like a burden. Health is a stressful thing to actually have to think about. Can you reduce the amount of cognitive burden that's on people? So yeah, it's like it's something that's super exciting.
How do you advise on your mother? So your mother, seeking about the information of the health, right? So what is your advice for?
She advises me.
Oh, shit.
I'm telling you, yeah.
Okay.
I have a superstar mom.
Okay. Gotcha. So the next question is, what is the best advice you got from your mom?
From her?
Yeah.
Well, both of my parents, they're like, look, there are some things that are out of your control in life, right? Don't let things just compound on top of you and have them like derail your health and like do all of that stuff, right? Like life continues. Yeah.
It sounds very spiritual, actually.
It is.
Because
It is.
you mentioned meditation and you're in the startup environment.
Yeah.
How do you think about mental and spiritual wellness?
So, well, I'm Muslim, and spiritually, like we think of there's physical practice in our religion, but it is a very like ongoing, daily, like very reflective faith, and you incorporate it into like all parts of your life, and so it's super important because that also has a big impact on your health and the way that your mental state is and the way that you take life's challenges that come at you, or even the way that you have the motivations that you have behind the work that you do or the things that you're trying to solve, right? Like it's not an isolated part of life that you like. We don't compartmentalize it. Like it really meshes with kind of your entire existence. And so like those things for many people are very important too. And it's a very important part of health, both ways, right? Like, does this help my health, and does my health help my faith? And I think there's a lot of people that think that way.
Great. Anything you want to share? Final thoughts on well-being in the workplace, outside?
Man, now I have like something like so elegant, and I don't do that well on the fly. I don't know. Maybe I'll come back.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
nothing's coming to mind. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Have you been to Japan before?
I have.
You have?
I have.
What's your perspective?
I love Japan.
You love
I
Japan?
love Japan.
Did you learn anything aside from maybe going to onsens in Japan as a well-being thing to do?
I think the thing that you immediately recognize in Japan is that it's a very careful and disciplined culture, and there's a lot of value and well-being that actually comes from that. It's not another level of effort and work. It's actually a way of existing that actually makes things just better. And you don't see that anywhere else. You don't you immediately feel that in a lot of things in Japan. There's just a level of dedication that is it's so impressive.
Have you tried some kind of meditation called Zen or
I haven't.
in
No,
Japan,
I haven't.
Okay.
Familiar with it, but I haven't. Yeah.
Maybe Japanese have the spirits of kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's why we are dedication, I hope.
I think it's such a big thing of Japanese culture. It's incredible. Yeah.
Interesting. Last question will be give us your final thoughts on how we can all be well in 5 words.
There's a lot of data on this, right? You got to sleep well. Western diets are terrible. So like we got to fix the things that we're eating. Like there's many times where I'll travel to different parts of the world and eat the same stuff and just feel a lot better. because what are the ingredients that are going into those foods? Like that stuff is really, really, really important. It compounds. Being able to kind of, disconnect a little bit. The world that we live in is very chaotic. It is very chaotic. And it's, we have to figure out ways as individuals to let's not let that chaos just like consume us 100%. It's not practical to say that you can completely disconnect from the way that the world is working, right? Like that's not realistic. But we have to be very mindful of how much of that external stuff is impacting ourselves. And there's so much data on this. Like people are analyzing every single thing about this. I think those are classic things. It's not a surprise to anybody, but it just requires dedication. And it pays off, and it pays off quickly. The human body is incredible, by the way. Like it's so dynamic and it's so resilient and it's so adaptive that you can change the course of your, how your health is actually going. It doesn't take that much to do.
Interesting. It's a great advice, over the 5 months, but it's very good.
Sorry.
Sleep well, good food, disconnect.
Okay.
3 words.
Efficient.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you. That was fun. Thank you so much. Thanks, guys.